Thank you very much. Then I share my screen first. And I wish a good evening, everybody. It was only this Monday that a summary of mine about the Usuarium project and its precedents has been released in the United States. So I don't want to detail the principles very long. I recommend to you this paper of mine in the Church Life Journal of the Notre Dame University in America. It is based on a lecture that I held in Vienna last November, and it summarizes the problems that I will shortly summarize in the following minutes. So when I started to deal with liturgical sources outside of Hungary, I was embarrassed by some problems. And the first of these problems was, and it is especially interesting for you as musicologists, that the liturgical sources are mostly textual sources. This is a problem from the perspective of either of musicologists who are primarily interested in melodies, or from the perspective of liturgical worshippers who want to reconstruct liturgical ceremonies, and they are interested sometimes in the gestures or the clothing or in the processions or the spaces and so on. So this is a problem that all what we know about liturgy is mostly restricted to its text. The other problem is that even in this context, we have too many books. So tens of thousands of service books survived, even if many of them went lost. And there is practically no person or no diligent research group that could process the total of the surviving evidence. And the last problem is that the proportions of the surviving material are very uneven, meaning that some dioceses are very well documented. For example, when I made research on the missals of northern France, I could find about 40 or 50 missals from the dioceses of Paris or Sens, from the 13th century to the 17th century. But when I was interested, not in Hungary, but for example in southern France, it was hard to find any source from many of the dioceses from the Mediterranean regions. So if I rely on a sample drawn from the earliest evidence, it will be extremely disproportionate. Some regions of Europe, like Lorraine or northern France, will be overrepresented, and other will be underrepresented or won't have any sources at all. This is a challenge to us because I always wanted to achieve a relative comprehensivity, meaning that I wanted to narrow the scope. It means that even if I have 40 missas from Paris, I am only interested in the way how the Parisian liturgy was celebrated, and actually one authentic missal from Paris is enough to know how liturgy in Paris went on. So in this situation, I have to narrow the scope to only one representative sample. On the other hand, in other regions like in Hungary or in Northern Europe or in Southern France, we have to widen the scope. So we must find evidence for dioceses or for traditions that are underrepresented in the overall material. These two illustrations come from an article of mine, which is forthcoming in Ephemerides Liturgicae, and these were compiled in a situation when I wanted to compare the orations of the summer Ember Saturday. This might seem a very particular problem, but this is a very good illustration to understand the variation of the euchological, the sacramentary material of the Roman Rite. The table represents in columns uses, it means dioceses, and the rows represent 50 years periods of 50 years. And you can see that in the upper region of the table, about after 1400, almost every diocese has one or two or sometimes three representative sources, but in the regions below, the evidence is very disproportionate. Some dioceses have early material and others have nothing. Most of them have nothing. And the map represents the regions which have early material at all, and you can see that Eastern Europe or Northern Europe or some parts of Spain are very poorly documented. My direct apropos was my research on the early Hungarian liturgy. I wrote my PhD thesis on the ordinals, on the normative texts of the Esztergom or Grán or Strigonium Rite. This is the archiepiscopal see of Hungary, and I tried to compare the late printed material from the 15th and 16th century to the earliest extant Hungarian evidence, which comes from the 11th century. And I was struck by the discovery that the extraordinary rites of Candlemas, Ash Wednesday, or the Holy Week, these are the only ceremonies that are both documented in the earliest and in the latest material, are exactly the same. On the screen, you can see our first Hungarian document of Candlemas. This is the Pontificale Hartvirgi, or also known as the Agenda Pontificalis of Bishop Hartwig from the 11th century. And on the other side, the manual, the ritual of Miklós Olach, a humanist Archbishop Esztergom, who issued or published this printed book in 1560. And the contents are exactly the same. So the way how the Candlemas blessing of the candles, the fire, and after that the procession were celebrated in Esztergom were identical in 11th century and late 16th century Hungary. Of course, this means the isolation of distinctive traits, because these congruencies can come from the common heritage of the Western and the Roman tradition, but in this case, I am not speaking about such, but about structural solutions or choices or arrangements of specific textual items that are distinctive for not only for Hungary, but especially for Esztergom. And in this respect, we can assert a continuity over nearly 600 years. It is important to emphasize that this continuity can only be demonstrated in the case of precise lineages. I mean that, for example, we have several, not very many, but several sources from the 12th or the 13th century. None of them confirms this continuity. It is because these other Hungarian sources belong to different lineages, that is, to different ecclesiastical institutions, and not exactly to the tradition of the Esztergom Cathedral. So we have to identify the precise lineages which represent the continuous tradition of a specific ecclesiastical institution, not generally of Hungary or something like this. And it is extremely important because had we not the Agenda Pontificalis of Bishop Hartwig, we could hypothesize that the use of Esztergom, the specific tradition of Hungary's central bishopric, developed only by the 14th century, because the next earliest evidence comes from this time. But the existence of these early 11th century documents proves that the continuity did exist. This encouraged me to think in uses, that is, in continuous traditions, of which the most important feature is that they are rooted in a specific soil and belong to a specific institution. So they do not move, and that's why I have to think in uses and not in history but in typology. Of course, to assess such a continuity, I needed a control material that I had to compare my recently discovered Hungarian distinctive traits to other variants of the Candlemas ordo or any other ordo, and to demonstrate that they are not the same. So the distinctive traits that I have discovered in Esztergom and found that they are continuous and specific for only this use do not exist anywhere else in this form in the Western Rite Europe. So this was why I developed some working hypotheses and departed from my more modest researches regarding Hungary and try to build up a comprehensive system of comparing medieval Latin liturgical information. These are my three main working hypotheses. The first is that if I want to put it briefly, what Usuarium is about, I can say that this is a map view of liturgical diversity. If you want to understand the significance of such a paradigm change, you can compare this vision of a map to other forms of visual representation, like, for example, a table or a tree diagram or a chronological timeline, and so on. The next principle is the priority of prints. It may prove strange to you, because especially musicologists are positively biased for manuscripts, because notes are mostly contained by manuscript evidence, and altogether beyond the musicology, medievalists tend to despise the prints. Why I prefer them? Only because in this system of mapping, an information is valuable according to the firmness of its locality. Early prints, liturgical prints, typically refer to the site of their origin in their titles, in their rubrics, or in their colophons. So the value of a source in my system depends on its capacities of localization, and prints can be better and more reliably localized than any other forms of liturgical evidence. And certainly, I must admit that this paradigm has some limits. There are some parts of Europe which are under-documented by early prints and cannot be put on the map with all their information. For example, Italy belongs to this category, and some parts of Britain too. And there are chronological limitations too, because this paradigm of local usage, that is continuous and geographically conditioned traditions, developed or evolved only in the second millennium. So the nascent Hungarian church, this 11th century state of affairs, coincides with a pan-European phenomenon of churches identifying themselves with a specific form of celebration as their own use. In the Carolingian times, for example, or in the Ottonian church, or in the Old Latin rites, there are other paradigms. I have some guesses or some hypotheses about the mental maps of earlier medieval worshippers, but this is not the topic of my current presentation. The achievements by these springs are, as it can be read on the screen. So just now we have reached the full geographical coverage of Europe. All the dioceses that are marked by red on the map are processed with a full service book, and it means that more than 1,000 books have indices. I will detail what an index means in these systems. We have in the database more than 1,100,000 records. This is, I think, a very large quantity, especially if you consider that these are all human input records, so nothing machine read. And this means about 220 complete books, each counting approximately 600 or 700 pages, and they represent 197 European traditions, most of them dioceses, and if I can remember well, 9 religious orders. 38 contributors have worked on the project. From them, 13 are still active. And we still work on the cleaning up of the data and on the standardization of the evidence, because this is a structured but still raw information, and to find all to achieve all the possibilities which I will shortly introduce, we need a cleaned up, a standardized, and a corrected set of data. And you can follow our Facebook page and get notified about all the improvements or the new acquisitions in this address. So let us start a short guide of the page. First, our logo. This is the eagle of Usuarium. This comes from this page of the first surviving Hungarian service book. This is the Benedictional of Esztergom. And it shows an eagle. Why an eagle? Because the eagle is the bird which looks with keen eyes over the world from a great distance. In the patristic literature, the eagle is always a symbol of St. John the Apostle, who is the theologian who does not bother himself with the earthly things of the birth of Jesus, but he's interested in the eternal conditions. And accordingly, we, like the eagle, try to look at the geographical and historical variation of Europe from a great distance to find the lasting and most important patterns in this respect. If you open our page, you can follow the latest acquisitions. They are always out for 1 week. These are the published sources, and of course you can download the digital copies. The latest improvements, are mostly the informatical improvements or the new sets of data which has recently been published in the page. And the new contents too. This is not the new, this means not the new digital copies, but the new indices or the changed indices, the new conspectuses. It means the new textual contents, new information that has been uploaded to specific sources. And after that, you can read the general preliminary notes, which are only about the collection, like about a digital library. This is relatively outdated. So now I'm writing a more comprehensive monograph on the topic, and it will soon replace this earlier piece of mine. The first part of the collection is the digital library. As you can see, the Usuarium has a twofold meaning. From one perspective, it is a digital collection of source copies, and from another perspective, it is a database of structured information. This is suggested by this vertical dash between the points of menu, which from left of it, you see the menus which belong to the digital library, and right of it you can follow the aspects of the database. So the first one is the sources, where you can browse for anything you are interested in. For example, let us look at the Missale Dominorum Ultramontanorum. This is the first printed service book which has survived from late medieval Hungary. We still do not know who these Domini Ultramontani were, but it is sure that the Missal was printed in Verona, and it belonged to a Hungarian ecclesiastical institution. So opening this book view, you will find a short title of the book, then the original title, the origin, it means the use of which it is representative, the gender, the age of its printing, in the case of prints, the printer and his place and time of activity, the shelf mark and the library, and the relevant catalogs that list this entry. And we also write out the prices of the books in Hungarian forints, so that you can, by knowing the rate of exchange, assess that many millions of Hungarian forints, that means tens of thousands of euros, have been invested into this collection, which is open to every one of you. You must ask for a password and a username, but all the researchers who are interested in the topic are provided with this password and username within 1 day. And after that, you find the contents. This is the index. It means a list of the sorts of ceremonies or the types of liturgical contents that are included in the book concerned. There is a page link at each entry. For example, here is the Palm Sunday, and if you click the bottom left of Palm Sunday, then you will see shortly the page. This is always a small page view because I wanted it to be very fast. And if you are interested in the detailed contents of the page, you can make it larger. The next menu is the uses menu. This means the ecclesiastical institutions that had a continuous, a lasting way of celebrating the liturgy. And it mostly comprises dioceses, but there are also centralized religious orders here, like the Dominicans or the Carthusians, and monastic houses, which are not comprised under a title like the Benedictine order of the Augustinian canons, but they are provided separately because they indeed had separate liturgical uses. For example, this is Liège, and here you can check everything what we have from Liège. This view, this uses view, lists all the sources of which we are now aware. So it does not mean that all the more than 7,000 sources can be downloaded from the Usuarium. About 2,000 can be downloaded. The other 5,000 are listed like in a catalog of a book. Some of them have links to an online availability. Others are only listed as catalog entries, and if somebody needs them, we can try to order digital copies. The prices are extremely uneven. Just now we have acquired the only surviving printed missal of Arles in southern France for nearly 300,000 Hungarian forints. The third menu is the genres. This is a traditional list of the possible types of service books according to the Mass, the Office, the Other, which includes the ritual and the pontifical and the processional and so on, and the norm texts, which refer to customaries, ordinals, liturgical commentaries, and so on. These lead to the same material as the sources menu, but if you are interested in specific types of the Roman liturgy or specific categories of books that then you can approach the material from this view too. For example, these are the graduals. The fourth one is the library. So you can choose any library in the list and browse among the shelf marks. This is, for example, the Biblioteca de Catalunya in Barcelona, and you can find here all the service books which come from this collection and are present in the Usuarium database. The printers work in the same way, as we are especially interested in liturgical prints. The printers of the early print period and the of incunables are all listed here. This is connected with the CERL database, authoritative reference database of early printing. And this is, for example, Georg Stux, a printer from Nuremberg, who was responsible for many early prints, for example, of the early Hungarian church. And lastly, these are the catalogs, the important liturgical and non-liturgical catalogs, which can be interesting from any point of view. For example, our master, Janka Szendrei, has had an important catalog of the musical notated sources of medieval Hungary, and this is her entry. And under that, we can find all the books listed by her with the concerning reference numbers. The full view is here. This is the Missal of Lund, now Sweden, originally of Denmark. You can find here the edition, if it exists, and all the important information. The most valuable aspect of this way of description is that it contains especially those data that we need from our special liturgical perspective. I want to highlight the problem of the original title. When I introduced why we are especially interested in the liturgical prints, I mentioned that because they refer to their place of origin. This can only be deduced or inferred from the original title, the colophon, or the starting rubric of the body of the missal, and this is always written out in the field of the original title. Sometimes it means 3 different titles because one belongs to the title page, the next belongs to the opening of the temporal, and the third one belongs to the colophon. Let us now turn to the database. The most important, but the least conspicuous part of it is the system. I like to call it the Systema Liturgiae, according to the Systema Naturae of Linné. So this is a taxonomical approach of the liturgical system. And here you can find the relevant categories, the relevant fields, and the relevant values within them. You can opt for the Roman Rite, within that for the liturgy of the Mass, and within that for the season or the part of the temporal, and so on. To the layer of the sung or the chanted items, this is the gradual or the antiphonal, and after that you will find the generic skeleton, so the valid genres that can occur in the context of of the chanted layer of a Roman Rite Mass. In a table view, you can look at the format which we use when entering the data. It is quite complex and lists all the relevant categories, but in the online view, it is far more user-friendly. The ceremonies connect the information with the indices. I have a long article about this aspect of the research. It was published by the Question liturgique, and the title was Pontificals, Rituals, and Navigating Among Their Contents. It reveals that the project evolved from a more limited attempt to understand and to compare the contents of pontificals and rituals and processionals, because all of you know that pontificals, rituals, and processionals can contain a very colorful material, but you can never be sure of it if a specific content is actually present in one of these books. For example, if you are interested in the dedication of churches, you will try to find them in pontificals, that not all the pontificals contain such rites, but there are many sacramentaries that will contain them. And if you want to research the Palm Sunday procession, you will look for it in rituals and processionals, but many missals and many pontificals also contain Palm Sundays, and many do not. So that's why I wanted to list the contents of such books from a liturgical perspective and annotated the rituals by standardized tags. It meant that, for example, the epidemic was a tag for all the rituals connected to pestilence or plague, and regardless of the age or the type of the book that contained such material, they were all listed here. And from this respect, Usuarium provides a point of departure for any doctoral thesis that wants to process in a comprehensive way, for example, the rituals connected to epidemic. But there are more than 170 other such things. Oh, what's the problem? This is not mine. Here. I am sorry, but I shifted to the end of my presentation. Okay. So there are some categories, because you don't need to know our system of ritual tags to find what you are looking for, but you will find some categories, like, for example, here the church discipline, or the health, the mass, the monasticism, and by clicking these buttons, you will find the respective entries. And also you can look for the Latin keywords, for if you find any Latin formula in one of your sources, you can identify the English label which refers to these or similar contents in the database. After that, we have the list of topics. Topics mean all the liturgical themes of celebrations. These are mostly the saints and the feasts, the proper names of the saints and the different types of feasts, but all the votive intentions and the categories of the canon of the saints belong also here. For example, this is the commune, where we find the confessor, but within the confessor there is confessor unus pontifex and his vigilia, or confessores plures and confessores plures laici, and so on. This is also a standardized nomenclature, but very wide and possibly growing collection. If processing a new source and finding something that has not been in the database, we include it to the system. The votive things work similarly. For example, the Contra Pestem Mass can be a simple Mass against pestilence, but it can be the Mass against pestilence of Pope Gregory or Martyr Sebastian or Martyr Roch, and these all have specific tags. We have a special collections for the saints and feasts and for the dates. For example, this works like a digital martyrology. If you are interested in any of the days of the year, this is, for example, the 25th of November, which is widely known as the date of Catherine of Alexandria. But you can see here that, for example, in Nantes, they celebrated Hermelandus, and in Limoges, Justus, or in Metz, Livarius. And we can change our interest in the other direction and find, for example, a feast or a saint. This is the three Marys, Maria Jacobi and Maria Salome, and you can compare their dates according to the database, because they were not celebrated on the same date everywhere, and you can map the popularity of all those saints and feasts, which are not present in every Roman Rite source. For example, this is one of my favorites because my birthday is on the 26th of October, and in Hungary, this is the day of Saint Demetrius. Zsuzsa Cagány and his companions had written a full book about this martyr Demetrius, and this date of him is a Byzantine date, and you can check that in other parts of Europe there is a Demetrius for the 8th of October, but on October 26th they are only Hungarian sources, and one late missal from Aosta that contain the feast. We had an earlier texts menu, and it comprised the temporal mass proverbs of about 180 missals, and it was the predecessor of the present Usuarium database compiled in 2013 and 14 by my colleagues. This was a preliminary research. In this collection surpassed other liturgical databases, especially with its inclusion of ecological and lectionary material. So all the Cantus Index and the Cantus database and many other related chant databases, but this was an attempt at including the recited material of lections and of prayers too. Now we have just started to build up our new database of texts. Introits are already in it, and here you can find an Usuarium identification number, the Cantus Index identification numbers, and some mysterious numbers about their frequency and proportion in the whole Latin material, which I will discuss soon. In this text menu, you can browse for any word or series of words and find the full texts of the related liturgical items. For example, here the ab omninos expression was looked for, and you can find here the prayers which contain it. And this is another example for the prayers that open with the verb adesto. The most exciting part of the Usuarium, at least from my perspective, is the research menu, which now contains a generic synopsis, statistics for assignments, and other statistics for items, and a browsing surface for the indices and the conspectuses. These are the two types of information included. If you are interested in an assignment, this is the assignment query. For example, you want to know what the introit of the first Sunday of the first week of Advent was. You can look for it. Everyone knows that it was the Attelevavi, so it will be not extremely interesting result. But if you try another query, this is for the introit of the second Sunday of Lent, you will find extremely interesting results. Here they are listed, and you can ask for a statistical. No, I don't turn to the statistical results yet. So these are the raw information first. If you don't trust in me and in my colleagues, you can export our information in a table, an Excel table format, and work with the material as you like. But if you trust our work, you can click the statistics. It is not it is the structured statistics, the real statistics, and you will find that these are the introits that worked as the introits of the second Sunday of Lent. The percentages show that the most widespread introit was the reminiscere, as you know it from the Roman Rite. But there were other choices too. The next most popular was the Domine Dilexi with nearly 15%. And there were some sporadic solutions, this Dirigeme and the Dominus Illuminatium, which is also the Old Roman choice, and the Spira Intinte. The next possibility is to map these occurrences. And it is already more interesting because here you can realize that in the central continental areas and in the north, everywhere the reminiscere option is documented. And the Domine Dilexi is a peculiarity of the so-called Ibero-Provençal landscape. It means the Iberian Peninsula and France south of the river Garonne. And the Spira Intinte is a Norman option, and the white circles refer to places where not only one choice is documented, but there are several others. For example, Würzburg preferred the Dominus Illuminatio Mea, the Old Roman introit of the day, but the liturgists of Würzburg were perfectly aware that this was a very peculiar choice, and they allowed the diocese to sing the reminiscere, and the Dominus Illuminatio Mea belonged to the specific use of the cathedral, and therefore the service books of Würzburg provide both options simultaneously. The generic synopsis is a structured view of a specific genre throughout the ecclesiastical year. For example, this is for the Gospels, and in the first entry you find the Gospel of the first Sunday of Advent, but we have all the Gospels in this view, including the Sanctora, the Canon of Saints, and the most particular votives too. Here you can visualize the results too. Here are listed all the institutions, the dioceses and the religious orders and monasteries which use one or the other gospel. But if you change to the map view, you will find that the Cum Proprio Quasset, this is the entry of Jesus to Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, was the most popular choice all over Europe, especially in the north and in the east. The Erum Signa, which is in the Roman Missal, was a minority option, especially in Italy and in the Ibero-Provençal landscape. And this Ecce Mitto, this is the opening of the Gospel of Mark, was peculiar to Burgundy, Aquitaine, and some Norman uses. It's a very, very remarkable that, for example, Messina, this is in the edge of Sicily, uses the same option as the Norman uses of Britain or Normandy. Here we have the item statistics. The item statistics show for each standardized item how many times it occurs in the present state of the database. It means that we have 242 occurrences of the Kuma-Propin quartet in the database. And after that, you find the percentage of these occurrences. It means that of all the Gospels of the Roman Rite, this 328 millipercent belong to the entry Kuma-Propin quartet. And in this way, you can find the most popular choices of each liturgical genre, not only the Gospels, but the chants too. From another direction, you can check the diversity of liturgical assignments. For example, this sample shows that in the case of the Gospels, the first Sunday of Advent is marked by a diversity of 5. It means that at the most 5 options can occur in this position. And accordingly, you can browse all the liturgical diversities from the perspective of a specific genre and find the most sensitive assignments that can vary the most and contrast it to the most stable assignments which don't show any divergence. Each menu which refers to geographical information contains a link to our homegrown liturgical map. You can download it in a vectorial PDF file and compare the geographical patterns to the precise archiepiscopal sees, bishoprics, and so on. Even the religious orders are connected to their headquarters or places of origins. And this is my last slide, because in the title I refer to a synthesis. I don't think that such a large quantity of information can be understood by even the most expert scholar. I myself need huge work to understand the patterns and the laws behind the sources and the information. And this is why for 1.5 years now, I am working on a monograph or a handbook synthesizing the results which can be drawn from Usuarium. The first part is already ready. This is about the preliminaries and the basic problems of medieval liturgiology. And the second part is underway. It is about the Mass and the annual cycle connected to the Mass. It means the Mass ordinary, the Mass propers, and the extraordinary rites of the ecclesiastical year. I want to finish the main chapters of this book by midsummer, because unfortunately this will be the expiration of our present grant. And after that, hopefully, we can continue this research with the pontificals and the rituals and the divine office for years and decades on. And my vision is a modern counterpart of Edmond Martin's De Antiquis Ecclesiae Ritibus, which was published at the turn of the 17th and the 18th century, and is until this day the most important and most voluminous comprehensive series of books about the diversity of the medieval Latin liturgies. With due respect, I want to replace it with a 21st century manual, and the first 2 volumes are underway now. So thank you for your attention. I hope I was not extremely long. And now this is the time for your questions or comments or remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Miklós, very much for this amazing lecture and the great horizon, and over the horizon you let to flash before us. The view you provided to us is that impressive that I'm asking myself, what else do we need? I'm sure that there are a lot of questions and comments coming from the audience.
Yes, there are many hands on the screen.
Yes, yes. So please go on. I don't know.
Will somebody moderate the questions? Who will come after whom?
Yes, Hannah, please. Go on.
Okay, so Miklós, thank you very much. This is really amazing work. I remember a couple of years ago when we met in Budapest, and you have shown me your work in progress, and I see how it materialized now. It's so many congratulations. I have one question though, because you said that you are working with prints mostly, so which you consider as very reliable sources. And I wonder how much we can really always rely to printed books, because remembering the work of David Merlin, who is now also with us here, the printed books have always two sides. On one side is the institution who ordered them, who had their wishes, but on the other side is the printer, the entrepreneur who wants to sell, and can also adjust the contents of the book so it is much better to be sold on the market. So and I think he really could show that it actually also happened to some printed books. So this is, I wanted to ask you how you go around this problem.
Yes. The basic answer is quite simple. I always try to check the continuity of the evidence. So we don't deal only with printed sources, because as you can realize from the numbers, there were not many thousands of printed books. About a little more than 200 dioceses or religious orders published printed books in the period in question, and all the other sources are manuscripts. And even for dioceses that do not have any printed material, we rely on manuscripts. Now we are over this period of looking for geographical coverage, and now my colleagues are working hard on the processing of manuscript sources from dioceses from elsewhere. But my method was, as I mentioned in the introduction, and with my case with the early Hungarian liturgy, to check the continuity. So the method is that we try to find the distinctive traits, liturgical peculiarities which are special to one or the other use. And after isolating such traits, we turn to the earlier manuscripts and try to trace back the distinctive trait until when we can. For example, I mentioned you this case of Würzburg with the Dominus Illuminatio Introit for the second Sunday of Lent. I can show you the 14th century missal from a village about 30 kilometers from Würzburg, which has the same, and an 11th century gradual with neumes, where it is written in the margins with contemporary hand. And there are several other cases. For example, in the Ember Saturday of Advent, Augsburg used a very special form of the Canticle of the Three Children, the Omnia Opera Domini Deum Benedicite, and this is only in Augsburg. and it is in the printed sources of the late 16th century. And now we have a 10th century Missa from Augsburg where we find the same. So these are the positive examples. What you mentioned is, I think, especially typical for the added votive and sanctoral masses and the modern offices. And in many cases, the prints advertise themselves on the title pages as being very good and very good bestsellers, because they contain such novel items and novel offices. So I think we can quite well distinguish between traditional material. I think no printer or no bookseller was interested in updating an Ash Wednesday procession. And in other fields of interest, where the late Middle Ages or the early modern period played a more important part. We always must distinguish between them, but the most reliable tool is comparing every result to the earlier material.
Thank you.
Yes, are there other questions or comments?
There were yellow hands from David and Jan.
Yes. Yes, Jan.
Once one gets a login, is there also API access to the database?
If you have the login, I can provide you. Then you will only have access to the digital copies and all the picture related material, because they are owned by the processing libraries. And you can be an administrator of the page too, if you join our team. And in that case, you will have more. I am not an IT man, so I have a colleague who is responsible for the technical side of the project. I am the ideator, so I always explain what we need from the perspective of the system, but I am not a real technologist.
Right, because one thing I noticed was great was the option to just export a subset of the data that you want to work with. So I was wondering whether this was also possible somehow programmatically.
Yes, but you for the details you must contact my colleague. Now we have very important projects at hand. We try to expand to machine reading and to provide TI XML files from everything we have now, and we also want to experiment how some informations can be described in a graph database format. So I have many ideas how to develop the technological side further, but as you have seen, we are now in the synthesizing part of a long project, and the new initiatives will only come with hopeful new grants.
Thanks.
Yes, further questions, comments? Yes, David.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't find the reaction tools for the hand. So yeah, actually, Hannah asked the question I wanted to ask, but there is a second question I'd like to ask you. We know there are many databases and for printed books and for liturgical books, for musical books. As the universal short title catalogs, incunabula short title catalogs, and the database of Professor Andrea in Salzburg. So the early printed only printed music books. Have you collected the information from all these databases, or have you collected your information? Because sometimes there are information only in one database, sometimes are in multiple databases, and so there are double records, or some are only in one to be found and not in another one. Have you checked all these materials, or?
We did not check the materials. We always start out from the original copies. So no information is derived from any outside source into the database. All the information was entered by myself and my colleagues manually, because they follow a specific system which cannot be found elsewhere. So as I told you, our first breakthrough was the inclusion of lectionary and sacramentary material beyond chants. And as a matter of course, no musicological database was interested in prayers or pericopes. And there were also some other discoveries. For example, such was the separation of dates and feasts. This was why we needed the topics. There are other calendrical databases, but usually they handle liturgical day as 1 and 3. So a date connected to the topic of a feast. And so they cannot deal with the problem of feasts falling on the same propers falling on different feasts. So this is why we provide homegrown information, but in a next step we try to connect it with other reference databases. The first step was this collaboration with the Cantus Index, but this is departs from us and goes in the direction of the Cantus Index. We don't derive information from Cantus Index, but provide information for it. And the next phase will be a very important step. This is the inclusion of the Corpus Orationum. This is the more than 10-volume series of Latin euchology edited by Brepol's Corpus Christianorum, and we will initiate a sub-side of Usuarium as a Corpus Orationum database, and this will be the reference database for prayers. And we want to offer this possibility to other projects to digitally refer to contents which were not yet present on the internet.
Okay, thank you. So you didn't derive the information from other databases, collected it directly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's a big work. Compliment. So it's amazing. Yeah.
Are there any further questions or comments?
If anyone is interested in any specific problem, I can show maybe how it works in the practice. Or
Gabriel, please.
I have just a short question. Can you estimate when you will go to the field of the breviary? I'm waiting for that.
Unfortunately, the breviary is not in the best position to be included. I want to achieve this level, of course, but as you all know, the breviaries are the longest objects of liturgical research. For an average missal counts about 650 or 700 pages. An average breviary of the same format counts about 1,200. And breviaries were more numerous than missals. For example, after none of the dioceses founded after 1,300 issued printed service books. This is very important from the perspective of the Tridentine Council, because when Pope Pius V declared that all the uses which are older than 200 years can retain their specific uses, this was not a real question in that age, because all the missas were older than 250 years then. But then the breviaries were not. The breviaries were more numerous and more heterogeneous. The other problem is that if I am supported by secular institutions, you know, that unfortunately the most important institutions who can benefit from this research, at least from the perspective of cultural heritage, is the Catholic Church. But the Catholic Church does not support such projects. And if I try to acquire a grant from the European Union or from the Hungarian state, then the breviaries are not so fancy. Because if that's why I want to apply with the pontificals and the rituals, because they contain very interesting political rituals and societal institutions and rights that belong to the private life of the people. So this is very sexy in modern terms, and can find some support. I think that the breviary will always remain a side project. I want to include it, but it will be the last part of the endeavor.
So we have to wait decades for that.
No, I don't think so, because I plan. This was a 5-year plan. After that, another 5-year plan could be the pontifical and the ritual. And on the way, I try to make some experiments with the breviary too. For example, you are a fan of the Psalter, and I am too. And I think that processing all the Psalters from Europe is a quite feasible project. Mm-hmm. And it could be achieved within a few years. There are about 40 Psalters in Usuarium now, and we could expand this amount.
And it can be a basis for the further procession.
Yes, a very good orientation for further work. And maybe the temporal can be included too. There are very, very intricate questions. For example, if I try to describe the patristic lessons of the breviary and to differentiate between the really existing entries and the divisions of the same entry, it is a really difficult task. Mm. Because the lessons are sometimes the same, but each breviary, even from the same tradition, divides them in another way.
Yes, and shortens sometimes.
Yes.
The later, the shorter. Yeah.
Yeah. So even theoretically, it is the most difficult task. Okay. But you are welcome in the project.
Thanks.
Yes, Anne, please.
Yes, I'm very sympathetic to your comments there about how the Catholic Church doesn't seem interested in supporting this kind of work. I have the very same experience. And of course, it's not only of interest to musicologists like ourselves and liturgists, but also indeed to the whole history of Catholic heritage. So I just wanted to put that out there because I feel your pain in this one. And the second thing is, I didn't completely understand your comment about the greater interest from secular bodies in supporting work on mass books, on graduals, but not on breviaries. What is the reason for that?
No, it is not. There is no difference. The missals are easier to process because there was a practical aspect of the problem. When I started my work, it was in 2013, I had to train my group myself. The first group of Usuarium has been collected from graduate students from the university. And to explain to people of different backgrounds the structure of the Mass seemed to be easier than to explain the structure of the office. And it was more successful to process a missal or the temporal missals than to start with the breviaries. So this was a practical aspect of the problem. And nothing
I understand. Thank you very much.
Franz.
Yeah.
How many ordinals, libri ordinari, did you include into the project?
The ordinals were not the focus of this project. I had some ordinals from my previous work, and I edited some ordinals, and this was my first topic as a student, and the object of my doctoral thesis too. But after that, I turned to earlier material. So there is no systematic collection behind the ordinals in the work. About 40 ordinals are now in the system, including monastic books like customaries. So I know your magnificent work with the ordinals and the works of your colleagues in Graz, and we are not on this level yet. And it is but I think that there is a very important possibility in the Usuarium project, and this is that the system we are using is appropriate to describe the contents of normative texts and service books alike. The proportion of the rubrics and the texts will be different, but in the same system, you can enter the full content of an ordinal. So I want to go in the same direction as the Salzburg ordinal project with these TI-XML editions, but this is more apt for the rubrics than for the standardized and uttered texts.
And how did you standardize the original liturgical texts for the reason of comparison?
Yes, the way of standardizing is that at first we enter a three-worded entry for each. The chants and the lessons are written with their opening formulas. The prayers are written both with the opening and the closing formulas. And after that, we have a process which we call standardization. It means that my IT colleague exports all the existing entries of a specific genre. We check the items, correct them from a grammatical and orthographical point of view, and attach to them a normalized form of the concerning entry. It is like the cum apropos quaset Matthew this and this number in the case of the pericopes, and it contains the corpus orationum numbers in the case of the prayers and the cantus index IDs in the case of the chants. And after that, we have a double marked standard item. There is a short incipit, and after that, a reference number which belongs to this incipit. And all the varying items are connected to this standard item. And this will be the subject of the later research and mapping and so on.
Oh, that's very fine. My last question, and then I stop. Do you have a note, same text, different melody?
No, I realized the importance of this, but as this is a textual database, and one of my principles was that textual information is the most widespread and the most proportionately documented in the Latin West. Then we must start with the textual evidence. And this is a broader perspective. After that, of course, we can include the ceremonial information or the melodic information, but now we have much to do before reaching this level.
Thank you very much. And they want to join the project.
Can I?
Yes, Eva, please.
Do you hear me? I have
Yes,
only
yes.
one practical question. Miklós, thank you very much for your great work. But what experience do you have with obtaining publishing licenses? Obtaining publishing licenses.
Publishing licenses. This is a gray zone, I think, and we we don't need to deal with this problem too much. I have a lawyer colleague, and she told us in the context of an event organized by the Center for Digital Humanities at our university, that if I have a database protected by password, then I won't have any problems with the publication rights. And the first thing we write out in the copyright menu of our database, and everyone who wants to access a picture must read this first, is that this is only for private use and only for registered users and for scholarly purposes. I think that there would be some libraries which might be discontent with this solution, but I hope that they won't discover what we are doing. This is for public purposes, and this is also, I think that this is counterbalanced, but by our achievements, because all our achievements are added values, and they are open to the public. Anyone can download all the information we published, and everyone has access to the source material which we purchased, and this was not small money. So I think we are quite altruistic, and anyone who is disturbed or annoyed by this activity must be a bad person.
Yes, I would like to say just a few words that it's really amazing, a very complex and well-structured system. So you can start with looking for particular use, the sources belonging to the use, the repertory of the source with direct connection to the digital images. So there are a lot of statistics. You can see the frequency of a particular chant or the text in the sources, and then skip directly to the source, like similar. So there are in fact endless possibilities for research. What I would mention with a very small criticism as a daily user of Usuarium, the simple search option could be a little more be visible on the front page, because now it's like hidden in the menu bar where you have sources, uses, genres, and so on, and then the option text, which stands actually for searching for text or strand text.
So what you mean?
Highlighted.
You mean the research, the searching field for the text menu?
Yes, it's not so clear or not so evident.
Yes, I know that, but this is because the text menu was an outdated option. Yeah, now I can show you that. Okay. Yes. Yes. So this was the old text menu, this outdated one, and now we are developing this ongoing text menu, which only contains now the introits. After having reached the full coverage of the textual items, we will update this text menu and we'll provide a better searching field to that. Until that, this is the research field, and I know that this is a little hidden, but yes, but I will remember this feedback. The problem is that you can not only look for texts, but for many other things, and this is why the best solution I can offer is that after opening the text menu, you will immediately find a searching field. Now this is hidden because this doubled text menu, one outdated and one ongoing.
So I don't know if we have time for further questions. Hannah, what do you think? But if there are no more questions and no more comments, I have to thank you, Miklós, at first for your amazing lecture. Yes, Hannah?
I am applauding.
Okay.
Applauding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you, and thank you for all for listening, and have a nice evening. And we will welcome you on our next event.